Welcome to In Conversation With, a Hollywood Reporter podcast produced in partnership with Apple TV+. In each episode, we sit down with the creators and stars of some of TV's most compelling shows to hear more about what went into bringing these stories to life. I'm Rebecca Ford, awards editor at The Hollywood Reporter, and for this episode, I'd love to welcome J.K. Simmons, who stars in the drama Defending Jacob. Known for his work on both TV, from Law & Order to Oz and The Closer, and film, from the Spider-Man franchise to his Oscar-winning turn in Whiplash, I think it's safe to say anytime J.K. Simmons turns up in a project, you're in for a memorable performance. And Defending Jacob is no different. J.K., thank you so much for chatting with us about Defending Jacob. I thought your role was so memorable in this, so I'm excited to hear a little bit about it. Maybe for people who haven't seen the show, you could just tell them a little bit about who you play and the general gist of the story.
Well, I play Billy Barber, who some people insist on calling Bloody Billy Barber for reasons that people will see if they watch the show. Chris Evans' character is my son. Jaden Martell's character is my grandson. And one of the things that my character brings to the whole intrigue of the story is there such a thing as a murder gene? Is there some genetic thing that I have passed down to my grandson that might make us more or less inclined to think he's guilty of this terrible crime?
Perfect. And tell me about how this project first came to you. Was it a script that landed on your desk, or how did you first sort of get involved?
It was a script that landed metaphorically on my desk, my inbox. And I was immediately intrigued by the idea of it. And then I saw Morton Tilden was attached to direct, and he and I had worked together a couple years before on Counterpart. And Chris Evans playing Andy Barber was another big part of the draw. And then once I cracked it open and really started reading Mark Bomback's adaptation of the novel, I thought it was really, really compelling, and I was ready to sign up.
So when you are approaching a project like this, obviously this story is based on a book. Do you focus mostly on the script, or do you actually visit a book when it's a project like this? It's an adaptation.
That's an interesting question, and I've honestly gone back and forth on that, depending on a variety of factors. In this case, I never did read the original novel because it seemed, as I learned what departures or differences there were in Mark's adaptation, I think sometimes having a really thorough knowledge of the source material, especially in a smaller supporting part like this, it can kind of get in my way of dealing with, the reality of the 8-hour project that we're shooting and my character's impact on it. So in this case, I only read the adaptation, Mark Bomback's script.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this character, he's in prison for this apparently terrible murder. But how do you, as an actor, come to understand him? Because obviously you can't see him as that black and white as just pure evil or anything.
Well, and that's another good thing about this script, and the thing that I look for in scripts in general is when you're playing especially such a character who's done such terrible things, it's easy for a writer to be lazy, an audience, an actor to be lazy and just go, oh, he's evil, he's terrible, he's the bad guy, which he is. But Mark is smart enough and kind enough to offer us little glimpses here and there into this guy's humanity, and whether or not you can empathize or sympathize with him, you at least have a glimpse into his psychology and his damage and his humanity. And
so when preparing for a role like this, how do you figure that out?
Well, that's really it. I mean, that's the biggest part of it to me is finding something that I can identify with, and ultimately the best way in for me, whether it's, a good guy or a bad guy, is what is it that he loves? What aspect of love can motivate this guy? And love, is a beautiful thing, but there are twisted variations of it too, like in this case. But that to me is always the first thing that I look for as a way into just kind of psychologically wrap my brain around any character I'm going to play.
I think, a lot of your memorable characters have been bad guys or, scary guys or very intense guys. But I'm curious, do you find that you are getting more of those roles because you are known for being so successful at them? Or do you find that you get all sorts of scripts at this point in your career?
Well, that's the beauty of being at this point in my career is I am getting enough of a range of different kinds of offers coming my way. It was a very gradual road to getting to the point where I was getting any offers at all and not standing in line with 1,000 other guys to audition for something as I was in the early days. So the fact that I've got enough of a background now in playing good guys, bad guys, comedy, drama. I have been able to, to keep myself interested and hopefully keep audiences interested in watching the stuff that I'm involved in and not just being too predictable.
No, I definitely think when you look back at your career, you've done such a wide variety of types of films and types of characters and everything like that. But when it comes specifically to this project, what was I know, as you mentioned, this murder gene is sort of a big part of the story. Like, can that be passed down, among a family? What was sort of your take on that? Did you read up on it? I found that a really fascinating part of the story.
Yeah, you know what? That I'm just sounding totally lazy now because no, I didn't read specifically on that background either because again, there's that debate is something that certainly occurs to all three generations of Barber men in this story. Jaden's character and Chris's character and mine as well. But I think the fear of that reality, again, for all three of those characters, the fear of that possibility being the reality was enough to inform what was going on. So, and again, it's not like there's definitive science
right.
coming down on one side or another of it. So the open debate was what I found compelling about it, or part of what I found interesting.
Mm-hmm. And most of your scenes are with Chris Evans, obviously when the son goes to see the father in prison. Tell me about working with him. Did you guys have time to rehearse, or was it just kind of a step into it and shoot kind of situation?
Yeah, it was kind of a step in and shoot. I mean, there's always a little bit of rehearsal, on set, but mostly it was, I kind of hit the ground running on the stages there in Boston. Everything I shot was on the same soundstage, and we were able to do all of our scenes basically in chronological order, which was a real unusual blessing, so that we could see the relationship develop as it develops. But just working with Chris was great. He's very open. I had seen him obviously in Captain America and those things, and my wife and kids and I had seen him in a play on Broadway a couple of years ago, which was the only other time I'd met him in person backstage after the show. And he was really good in that Lobby Hero, this Ken Lonergan play, and.
Yep.
So I knew I was going to be working with a guy that I had respect for as an actor, which obviously is the way you want to approach something. And then he's also an executive producer on this, so I was like, I hope he can just take off that hat and put on the actor hat for our stuff together, which he totally did. And we did our thing, and just got an opportunity to sit around and talk about sports and just hang out together too, which was fun.
And as you mentioned, you were working with Morton again after Counterpart. What is it about his directing style that you enjoy?
Well, Morton's a real visionary, I think, can be an overused word in our business. But but his visual sense is, so far over my head that it's something that I appreciate about what he brings to the table, too. And then, also, especially in this case, usually an 8-episode, 8 different hours, you're going to have, at least 3 or 4 different directors on it. So to know that Morton was the director for essentially an 8-hour movie was a great thing to know in terms of just continuity and knowing that, this is the guy that has his hands on all aspects of this and a really thorough understanding of where everybody's coming from. And then, as with all the directors that I've really enjoyed working with the most, he's also really collaborative and ready to listen to, my point of view on something and Chris's point of view, obviously, and it becomes a real team effort.
So when it comes to the directors you've enjoyed the most, you mentioned collaboration, but what else do you find is sort of makes it a strong match for you when you're on set?
Well, a few things. First of all, just, somebody who's really smart and competent and thorough. And that to me is ideally is a combination of being really impeccably prepared and knowing exactly what they want to get overall and on a given day in a given scene. But at the same time, not letting their preparation get in the way of being open to spontaneity, or whether it's, literally improvisation or just, a slightly different take or perspective on something. And that's something that I've enjoyed in all my collaborations with my favorite directors, whether it's Morton or the Coen brothers, Sam Raimi, or my wife, Michelle Schumacher, who I've actually worked with a few times, Jason Reitman, Damien Chazelle. There's a long list of directors that I've enjoyed that kind of relationship with.
Well, I have to ask about working with your wife. Is it different when you two disagree versus a, Damien Chazelle or Coen brothers collaboration?
Well, we try to keep those disagreements offset so that, we're prepared going in, so that we can disagree, lying in bed the night before about what we're going to do the next day and then, kiss and say goodnight at the end of it. And, she's the writer, she's the director, and she's going to be the editor. So in that case, as in most cases with most directors, I'm at the end of the day, I'm going to offer my input, and then I'm going to shut up and do my job.
Yeah, she's the boss there, I assume. So I ask actors this often, but I am curious what you do if it isn't working with a director, if you just aren't matching up or sort of agreeing on the same level.
Well, there's a variety of ways that goes too. Hopefully, ultimately, you can get back to the page, the script, and find, if not complete agreement with what the director is saying he wants from you, at least a shade of gray that you can go in the direction that he or she obviously is wanting or insisting on, or and honestly, I prefer those kinds of interactions with a director, where you're really butting heads over something. Sometimes I prefer that to now this kind of deference that I occasionally get from a director because of my age and how long I've been doing this, and that I won a bunch of trophies in the past. I think sometimes people just throw up their hands and think, a guy who's established and been around this long I'm not going to really be able to direct him. So if I don't really agree, I'm just going to, let him steamroll me. And I never want to be that guy. I don't want to be the steamroller. I don't want to be, the pavement either. So, fortunately, those kinds of situations have been very rare in my experience. And there's always at least some gray area in the middle that I feel like I'm able to arrive at with the director. Mm-hmm.
And, with this role, obviously it brings you back into a prison. And I assume people can't help but bring up Oz because that was such a memorable role for you. How do you feel about that comparison or that sort of legacy of that role following you?
Well, listen, the legacy of that role following me, that whole show created by Tom Fontana was such a groundbreaking and brilliant piece of work that all those of us who really got big breaks from that show are, eternally grateful for it. Having said that, I even went into that job expressing to Tom my fear that, if this show has the impact that we think it might, I'm going to be stuck playing, the psycho white Nazi, murdering bastard for the rest of my career, and I don't want to do that.
Right.
And so, he allayed my fears, and enough fortunate breaks have come along in the meantime, playing very different characters that it wasn't a concern of mine at all to be going back, 20 years later almost to be playing another incarcerated, horrible human being, because in both cases there were occasional glimpses of humanity that it made it a compelling and complex character to play.
So when Oz was ending and you were figuring out your next gig, did you find that you were getting a lot of roles that were a little too similar to that, or was there more opportunities?
When Oz first started airing, it was like every phone call my agent got was to play the Nazi of the week on some, we were, first of all, blessed to be in a position to be able to turn those down, financially, because Law and Order started at about that same time. So I was playing the psycho on one show and the psychiatrist on another. So it made it easy for me to do what I knew was the right thing and not get stuck playing different versions of that same character for the rest of my life because,
Right.
And then, so enough opportunities came along during that 6-year run on Oz, which was like a summer stock job because we worked, 3 months a year, maybe 4, that after Oz ended, there were enough opportunities out there to do different kinds of things that I was able to just kind of take that momentum and go with it.
And what do you consider sort of your most pivotal or memorable roles? I'm sure fans have their opinions, but for you, which are the ones that stick with you?
Well, a lot of them, honestly, are things that people never heard of, things that when I started out doing theater, playing the lead in Brigadoon at the Big Fork Summer Playhouse when I was in college, joining the cast of A Few Good Men on Broadway, a few years before it was made into a film, playing Parolas in All's Well That Ends Well, but then having to break in the Neil Simon play, which was really what led to me transitioning from theater to film and TV. And then, obviously I owe a great debt to Sam Raimi, to Jason Reitman, to the Coen brothers for early breaks in my career and great experiences. And, most recently or fairly recently, Damien Chazelle and I connecting and the opportunity to make Whiplash with him and Miles Teller was, will always be a real high point in my career.
That was my first ever movie I saw at Sundance was Whiplash, and it was such an incredible. I was like, "This is what a premiere at Sundance is like." It was
they're all like that. Yeah,
I will always remember watching that for the first time. But when it comes to television, obviously you've been, you talk about Law and Order and Oz. You've been doing this format for a long time, and it's changed so much over the years. What do you sort of see as the strengths of the model as it is now and the challenges?
Well, the model as it is now with the Apple TV Plus, streaming, all these, it's been developing from my perspective for several years now as with Counterpart a few years ago for me and other things that I've guested in off and on. To me, it's the ideal hybrid between feature filmmaking and the old model of, 4 networks doing studio television and 22, 24 episodes a year. You have, in most of these places, certainly with Apple TV Plus, you have a significant budget to work with, and you have, you're surrounded by great people, great script, great actors, director, but you have the luxury of time, in this case, 8 hours in a limited series, to delve more deeply into these characters and tell either just a longer story or a more detailed story, which is what I've really enjoyed, both as an audience and as an actor.
Any particular challenges you think with the amount of television and streaming content there is now, or anything that you see as particularly difficult?
Well, really, it's just making choices is what's difficult, because there is so much content out there now. And, right now with most of us shut into our homes, that's one of the silver linings is being able to sift through and find some really compelling content like Apple TV Plus and Defending Jacob that, can help you while away 8 hours, whether you're looking for a comedy or a drama or something, at my house, my wife and kids and I are sort of going back and forth between finding something, really compelling and gripping like Defending Jacob. And then, after a couple of episodes of that, maybe take a break and watch a little comedy and then dive back into the story.
Yeah. And so Defending Jacob premiered on Apple TV Plus on April 24th, and we were already sort of in this new pandemic world at that point. How was that? Was that experience different for you? Obviously, doing interviews and press is a little bit different than it would be traditionally, but how did that experience change for you?
Well, in most ways, very similar to the way it changed for everyone else. We're here, we're home, we're trying to stay healthy and safe and keep others healthy and safe, doing our part, and fortunately, unlike so many people out there, we're not devastated financially by the pandemic. So we're just enjoying the silver lining of being together, and part of that has been spending virtually every evening on the little couch at the foot of the bed in Mom and Dad's room, watching. First of all, when Defending Jacob premiered, we waited an extra week and we watched the first 4 episodes in one evening. And,
oh, wow.
And then since then, we've been, waiting every Friday for the next episode to come out. I'm not giving any spoilers, even to my wife and kids. So we're all going to see what happens on Friday.
And what is your experience like watching your own work? Has it changed over time?
Yeah, it definitely has changed. I didn't mean to grimace there, but at first, after 20 years as a theater actor, it was just my level of self-consciousness was almost debilitating. But the opportunity to actually be able to analyze and critique your own work, which you don't have as a stage actor, was really valuable too. One of the first things I did was a guest spot on Homicide: Life on the Street, a Tom Fontana show, which is what ultimately led to me being a part of Oz. And I learned a lot from that, working with Andre Braugher and Kyle Secor, and having the opportunity to analyze your own work, I found to be a really valuable tool. At this point, having become officially a senior citizen this year, it's hard not to just, watch and go, oh my God, who is the wrinkled up old guy, because you still, we all still have this mental image of ourselves as the younger version of ourselves, the athletic young man in his prime, At least in my case, I was bald when I was in my 20s, so I don't have to worry about that.
And I'm curious, what's still on your to-do list? What do you want to, what kind of roles do you, you've done so many different types of work, but what do you still want to do? Is it more theater at this point, or what are your goals once we go back to work?
Yeah, more theater is a really intriguing idea to me, and I don't know how quickly, big theater is going to, live theater is going to get back on its feet. But that's something I've been thinking about for the last year or two, and we're bi-coastal again now with a place in New York and LA, so I'm hoping that I'll have an opportunity in some really interesting, compelling role that somebody wants me to play on stage again. But really just anything where I don't feel too much like I'm repeating myself is what I'm looking forward to.
Mm-hmm. Were you about to go into a project, or what were you sort of lining up before this, everything changed?
We were about a third of the way through shooting the 4th season of Goliath. And with Billy Bob Thornton, and I was the had that 4th season arc as his sort of nemesis. So, whenever things align for people to go back to work in film and TV in Los Angeles and surrounding areas, we'll hopefully find a safe way to get back to work and get that finished.
And we have 3 questions to sort of wrap it up because we're almost out of time. But I did want to ask you about some recent news about Zack Snyder releasing this new cut of Justice League, because I know you were part of that film. What are your thoughts on sort of a new version coming out? Zack's version, I guess.
Yeah, I'm always in favor of a director's vision. Especially a filmmaker who's been so iconic in that genre in general. There were obviously a variety of reasons for the way things shook out the first time around with that film, and I know there was a lot of fan noise wanting to see Zack's version of it, Zack's vision, and whatever your feelings were about the version that was at first released. I think, even if you absolutely loved everything about that film, I would certainly be interested as an audience to see Zack's vision. And the one thing I do know for sure is that it'll be long because he's got a lot of stuff that he wants to get in there. And I had a couple of really great conversations with him pretty recently, actually, as he was talking about finishing up his cut and excited about getting it out to an audience.
You've just been holding this big secret until it was announced. Good job.
No spoilers from me, ever.
All right. So as I mentioned, a couple lightning round questions, and then we'll wrap this up. So if you had to quarantine with one of your co-stars or crew from Defending Jacob, who would you want to be in your house with you?
Co-stars or a crew? I mean, honestly, because virtually everything I did virtually was with Chris Evans. I guess it'd have to be Chris. We just go up into my little workout room in the attic and take advantage of the time to get to he can stay in his Captain America shape, and I can try and fight Father Time, and we'd hang out and watch some classic Tigers versus Red Sox games.
There you go. Everyone saw those pictures of how fit you keep, so I'm sure you could keep up with Chris.
Yeah, well, it's all relative. Couple 2.5 decades on him, so.
All right. And if you could recommend a podcast or a film or something for audiences to watch during this time that you either have caught up on or found enjoyable while at home.
Aside from the obvious, which would be
Defending Jacob, yes.
Apple TV Plus, that would be number one on my list, as it should be on everyone's. But we've really enjoyed bouncing back and forth between some of the new content that's on Apple TV Plus and streaming services, and even going back to some classic. We recently watched The Office all over again, and
fun.
A little nostalgia and a little humor is a nice thing to inject.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And you've kind of mentioned this already, but what would you say is one way your life has improved during the stay-at-home time?
Well, the big silver lining for us, as I think it is for a lot of people, regardless of your circumstances, is just the family time together. We're fortunate to be healthy and safe and together. And I've really enjoyed, I don't want to say reconnecting, because it's not like we weren't connected, but the opportunity to have relaxed time together with my wife. And I think we've had more conversations and relaxed time together in the last couple of months than we've had maybe in the last couple of years before that. So that's been a gigantic silver lining. And I know we all are, want this to end and want to be healthy and want our friends and loved ones and neighbors to be healthy as well. And we'll welcome the opportunity to get back to whatever the new normal is. But in the meantime, togetherness is what it's all about.
Perfect. Well, JK, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about the show.
Thank you.
Defending Jacob is streaming now on Apple TV Plus. Tune in next week for another new episode featuring talent from an Apple TV Plus series, and be sure to check out our previous episodes, which are available now.